when the person you crave approval from is your future self, it frees you up to do the right things. When you think about it in action, should I do A or should I do B? And you simply say, you know what would my future self be proud that I did? It's amazing the clarity you have. Just wanted to let you know that I had the best trading day of my 14-year career yesterday. 70% of it was made in about 5 seconds after the employment report. I saw the data, knew how I was going to react, and aggressively got my max size on for an amazing trade. Then I was able to grind away for the next 3 hours and solidify career day. Thank you for your assistance in achieving this milestone. Also, out of my top 5 training days of all time, 4 have been in the past 3 weeks since the program started. So today we're going to be breaking down a case study, how somebody can achieve this kind of stuff and how they can get the 4 best days of their career, a couple decades of a career, because of a couple different instances and a couple different tools they were able to use. And we're going to be doing a case study. So with that said, Emil, welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah. All right, guys. So here's the deal. Dave is a trader in a hedge fund. Okay. He works in the States and he was doing very well and he was respected amongst his peers, but he knew he was playing small. He knew he was kind of holding himself back, and that really came to light with him when I held a virtual workshop for traders and I talked about the core fears. And he held his hand up in a Q&A and he asked something, and very quickly we realized he had a fear around abandonment and possible judgment. And as soon as we brought that up, I could see that he had this kind of look on his face where he was like, oh, whoa, that explains a lot of things. And from there on, he joined the arena and now he's in the Legion. And we're going to cover the results he's gotten, what enabled him to get those results, and the exact tool I used with him that basically allows you to plan things and think things through, even when there actually isn't time to do that, that allowed him to get that kind of result and get that record-breaking $800,000 day. So with that said, 2 main things to note. 1, Dave is a fake name. It's anonymous. He requested to keep his name anonymous because he works in a big company. And 2, for transparency, also just to clarify the numbers we're talking about, he doesn't take home all that $800K that we're mentioning. He only takes home about 20% of that. But again, that's enough to get you guac, even though it's extra. So it's all good. Aside from that, any questions before we get going, Emil?
No. 20% of 800K is reasonable. We'll accept that.
It's decent enough. All right. So what we're going to be talking about today is, on a high level, how so many people, what they optimize for is acceptance of others without even knowing it. And how that actually takes away from their own success. Because instead of thinking, what should I actually do here to get the highest likelihood of success for me? You think, how can I avoid possibly slipping up and having other people judge me or possibly abandon me, think negatively of me? And while we've talked a lot about the core fears on a lot of podcasts, I want to explain the exact process he went through, because I think that could be very applicable for a lot of you guys out there. Sounds good?
Yeah. No, I'm gripping onto my seat, looking forward to this one. No, really.
Cool. All right. So first things first, whenever we get somebody to start the program, first, like what we said, he identified that his primary fear was a fear of abandonment and judgment. So the first thing we got to do, we got to ask him, okay, what do you really want? Why are you here? And instead of asking, okay, what do you want on a surface level? I want to have, for example, bigger trading days. I want to make more money, all this kind of jazz. We started from the inside out. Because the reality is, whenever people say, I want this external result, it's because they're hoping this external result will cause them to feel a certain way. That if I get the house, if I get the big bonus, if I get the career day, if I get the exit, whatever it be, it'll make me feel a certain way. So what we do is we start by going inside out. We ask, well, actually, how do you really want to feel? What do you really want to feel about yourself, about your life, and all that kind of jazz? And that's the first thing we did with Dave. So the first thing, when we asked him, how do you want to feel, is he said, I want to feel proud, I want to feel accomplished, and I want to feel fulfilled. Now, if you notice, all 3 of those have nothing to do with other people. They're solely about himself, not himself in relation to other people, but himself in regards to himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we figured that out. And then we said, okay, what's the standard that you need to hold yourself to in order to be able to live that out, to really get those kind of feelings that you want to feel? And the standard that he set for himself, this kind of 6-month standard that he's going to focus on for the next season in his life, was, I want to live with courage. And in order to do so, I must take chances where I sense opportunity, because this will mean that I'll be proud of myself for going for it when I have that opportunity. And that was the step one. Because up until then, he had never really thought about it. He was kind of just going along with things. You know, he was already doing a lot of the right habits, planning, all this, but he never thought, how do I want to conduct myself as a human being from an internal perspective? And just that created a shift. Emilio, go ahead.
So yeah, saying just that created a shift makes it seem a lot smaller than that actual process was for him. So I recognize that statement that you made. That's from having gone through your process, right? That's having gone through the arena, and that in itself is unique for people to have gone through. So when you ask what do people want, most people don't know, right?
Yeah.
And when people think they know what they want, then it's usually because they've done countless other programs, and it's about external validation. It's like, oh, my 3-year goal is to have this many million or whatever crap. And all of these things are kind of externally validated for. So they're reinforced and kind of encouraged. So people are blinded to actually what they really want. And on top of that, the words you mentioned, fulfilled, accomplished, they're vague, right? They're vague words. They're hard to define, whereas 10 million or 800K or whatever, these are hard numbers. So it's not even laziness. It's just, it's hard to figure out what you actually want. And it's very easy and validated for to do other things. And lots of other people talk about it. And this is where people get stuck in a hole, and people will be stuck in this hole forever. So what you said, you know, this was just from doing this, or this was just the first step. This first step is huge. And I wanted to highlight that because people will leave this podcast feeling confused, like, but yeah, but this is so hard. It is. It is hard.
Why do you think it's hard?
It's hard because a lot of the material that we consume on social media and media and in general is superficial and externally validated for, which is a potent combination. It's abundant. It's all over the place. It's superficial, which is not good. And it's very, people love it. They're like, oh my God, that's an amazing goal. That's so powerful. That's so good. Let's do it. My goal is the same.
Can I share a hypothesis that I also have here?
For sure.
Now that you're just speaking, what could be interesting? I wonder if, because to me, this makes sense. Like obviously the way we do it. And what you're saying right now, for example, the goal, let's say I get to $10 million. I think that also signifies a finish line, which is very comforting for people. Oh, when I reach this finish line, everything will work out and I'll be great. And then I can finally have the life of my dreams. And saying I want to continue. Sorry, I just want to say this. And it was interesting because we have a group in the arena going on right now. And I don't remember exactly the question or whatnot, but somebody asked me, so like, when are you like good? When are you filled to feeling proud of yourself? And it's like, when are you done eating food or working out every day because you should do it?
Yeah.
And that's the truth. Like, if you really want to have these feelings, it's a constant process of doing things that you're acting in a way that you're proud of, doing things that fulfill you. And I think for a lot of people, there's a hope that, oh, if I just set a goal, I can get to the end of it and then I'll be done. Does that ring?
100%. But do you know what else that does? It also delays or puts off the difficult process of having to think about this for real. You say, I'll aim for 10 million. It's, super quick. You pulled it out your ass. That's exactly what I did. And then it means that now I no longer need to think about it because I have a goal. It's an audacious goal. It's whatever. It's 5 years in the future. I no longer need to think about this. I can just
put off the tough conversation with myself.
Exactly. I don't have to feel those feelings of actually
uncertainty.
Looking within. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. This is definitely not what I expected this podcast to go, but that was very
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but it was that was very interesting for me as well. I just learned something new. I really appreciate that perspective. So kind of to clarify, the way we do it is first we get people clear on how they want, and again, this is on a high level. First on how they want to feel, because I think everything needs to stem from that. Then we ask them what needs to be accomplished in order for that to happen, in order for you to get these feelings. And then what happens, because I see a lot of these guys, they're extremely ambitious and they can go over the top of certain things, especially things that are more tangible. So in order to keep them in a certain kind of lane and make sure they don't go all over the place, we also ask, what's the things you don't want to regret? For example, somebody can say, I want to feel accomplished, but that means they'll go bananas on their business, but they'll neglect their family life. And I don't think that'll leave you feeling proud at the end of life, that you neglected your family life for your business. So when we do those three things in that order, I feel people get very different level of clarity than they've had so far. So how do I want to feel? What's going to take in order for that to happen? But within what boundaries or constraints do I need to be able to pull that off in order for everything to actually work, to have a quote unquote like aligned life. Does that make sense?
100%, yeah.
Great. So we did just that part, as Emil said, and that was already big for him because it completely set the standard of how he wants to conduct himself. And once we set that standard, we figured out, okay, what are the gaps here that you have between this is how you say you are and how you need to start behaving. So then we figure out what does his effective mindset need to be? The effective mindset of somebody who wants to live this standard. So what values, what does this person need to start valuing for this to be a reality? And then how can we break down these values into very clear-cut rules that'll make it very simple for him. When this action when this thing happens, this is the action you take. Any questions about this so far?
No, this is the process. This is how you break down the achievement of the end goals, both the external and internal.
Yeah. So his top 3 values that he decided, if I adopt these values for the next 6 months, it'll help me live up to the standard that I set for myself, were perseverance, courage, and one value that was much more concrete was just trading bigger, point blank. So from what, again, I don't understand trading at specific levels in these hedge funds, but basically they get allotted a max amount. Like you're allowed to trade X amount of money per day. Each trader gets that max amount. And if you don't hit that max amount a certain amount of days throughout the week, throughout the month, they say, okay, you're not going to get a bigger amount. So what that does is when you see a giant opportunity, you can't really capitalize it because your maxes have been smaller. And that was an issue for him, that he wanted to get bigger limits. So let's break down these values. First off, the perseverance one, because we talked a lot about this whole standard is about to live with courage and to take chances with his opportunity and be proud of himself. So he had to have perseverance. And the rules that he set for himself is that when I have a short-term setback, I stick to my process and look at the big picture. Trading is extremely volatile. And if you don't keep your emotions in check, every time there's a bit of a dip, you're going to regress. Another one with perseverance is when someone doubts me and I feel the physical discomfort, that is a signal to follow through on my initial judgment and trust myself. Now, again, these environments, especially because you have bosses that kind of check you to make sure that the trades you're making are okay, they're in line with the risk portfolio, and so on and so on. It can be very nerve-wracking because basically if you don't choose to view this person as an ally who's trying to red team your thoughts so you can make better decisions, you can feel like this person's holding you back constantly arguing against you. And that's what led to rule number 3, that I take some positive nugget from every situation, even if it's painful initially. For example, getting feedback from people or getting feedback from the market, telling them, hey, this was a mistake. And he figured if I can have more perseverance, I can give myself the opportunity to live with more courage because I'm not going to be deterred every time there's a downside. Does this make sense so far?
2 things there.
Please.
One, those last 2 actions relate to our previous podcast about tough conversations where it takes 2 people to have a tough conversation, the person giving it with the right intentions and the person receiving it with the right mindset. So those last 2 rules are very much the receiving end, having the right mindset, which is awesome. The other thing to mention is, and I want to highlight this because it's important, values are a very overused word. And the way that we use them here, as Itamar explained, was that they're the things that are missing in your current mindset that allow you to have an effective mindset, which will allow you to be the person you need to be to reach your goal, right? And go on.
Can I explain that in a bit of a different way?
Please.
So basically, there's a gap between who you currently are and who you want to be. The way I see to bridge that gap is by saying, what would somebody who's at this place that you want to be, what are the main values that they hold? For example, in business, you can say, I admire this person because they've achieved this much. Well, what do they actually value? They probably value leverage more than you. They probably value strategic thinking more than you. Those are some examples. So the same thing, try to figure out what's the gap, what's the values gap and the thought gap that I need to bridge.
And with once you've identified those, it's not just about putting a word to them, because the words for different people might be the same, but they might mean something very, very different. So even though these words like perseverance and courage are very generic, don't be fooled by that. It's when you get to the rules beneath them, the specific actions that you need to take, that's where it becomes unique to you. And these are things that probably happened to Dave, multiple times a day or week, where he was taking the wrong choice, the easy choice. And he needs to now change that to take the hard choice. So by defining that and making that a part of the value of perseverance, he can then visualize the path to reaching his goal, and it becomes crystal clear.
Yeah, I really like how you said the easy choice. So the purpose of these rules are to make it very clear on how you can put yourself on the hook to live up to the values that you want, because they will let you become the man that you want. It's really that. It's how can we put you on the hook in as clear of a way as possible. That make sense?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's accountability.
Yep. All right, so that was value number one. Value number two was courage. And this was the big one. And his main rules were, I prioritize my belief in my judgment over approval from others. So when he notices, I believe in this thing, but I want their approval. No, if I believe in this thing, this is what I do. Or I intentionally put myself into situations where I might fail. Because again, if we're saying that one of his things that held him back was a fear of judgment or fear of abandonment, then we got to recognize this is a bias that you have to overcompensate for initially. Because you overly shy away from these situations. So what if for the next 6 months we overly correct it? Because then you'll probably find the middle ground where you should be. Does that make sense, that part?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of overcorrecting. Because people as a knee jerk shy away from overcorrecting and I did the same, because they don't want to go to that extreme. And that's probably why they've overcorrected in this direction. So, but be reassured that even if you overcorrect, you'll still only approach the middle. Yeah.
Yes. Very well said.
Exactly. Play with it.
Yeah.
Try it.
It's what you think over means because of where you are. But it's really important to understand. It's not really overcorrecting. It's just because of what your perspective is and your biases, what you think over is, but it's still probably in line with where it should be, unless, like Emil is saying. Yeah. So that was that. And then we had the third value, trading bigger. And that was very clear. As he said, very clear rules again to put himself on the hook. He trades his max at least once a week. Because if he can do that, he can showcase to his superiors, hey, I'm doing this at least once a week. Give me a bigger max. On top of that, proactively asking for bigger limits after reaching certain milestones in his trading. So every time he hits a specific, and I'm not going to say these out loud, but specific milestones of earnings, every time he does that, instead of just waiting, maybe we'll have a quarterly chat about this, maybe they'll approach me, maybe I can approach them. No, every time this happens, I go and I talk to him, hey man, we just did this. Can we up my limits? Every time to put him on the hook. And it was very uncomfortable for him because he's been avoiding doing that. But having that clear rule made it very clear what he needs to do. And finally, the third rule he had is, if I run things through my framework and there I go aggressively. Not I wait on this, not I think about it, not I hope I don't mess this up, I go. And as you can see, this is already starting to add up why he probably had all these big days in such a short span. Because he already had the skill set, he was just holding himself back from acting on it.
Yeah, it's a crystal clear roadmap. When you break it down like this, it's like, okay, I see exactly what I need to do. And you know this, you know all these things. This isn't magic. Yeah. This isn't hidden. And just one more thing to add there, which just occurred to me, but I love it, is when people have values, they think that that's enough to then take the actions to live up to them. Whereas when you have the actions and you do the actions, even when they're difficult, that is what allows you to live up to the values. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that second one.
I think whenever there's ambiguity, we naturally try to let ourselves off the hook, especially if we don't know we're letting ourselves off the hook. So the clearer you can make it, that's what that meaning is behind simple, not easy.
Yeah.
The clearer you can make it, the simpler it'll be for you to do the stuff that's not easy.
Yeah.
But if it's not clear, you can say, well, I can actually maybe go through option C or D or E or F. If F is the easiest and you haven't thought about it ahead of time, when you're in an emotional state, you'll choose the easiest path. That's why having these rules, preemptively deciding on these rules, I'm perfectly saying it, not just creating these rules, but deciding you're going to act on these rules, it's extremely powerful. Because in a situation that isn't comfortable, You'll still say, you know what, this is my rule. This is what I figured out, so I got to do this. This is what I'm going to do. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I think it hit home even more when it was very much, I need to trade at my max once per week.
Once a week. Yep.
And little rules like that means if you are doing this, by definition, you have courage.
Yeah. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way of saying it. So we got that down, but there's obviously still, let's call it emotional weight that could hold you back. And that's why we have this emotional fortitude part. Once you have clarity on what you want as far as your standard, I want to be more proud of myself. I want to act with courage. And you're clear on how you can actually make that happen. You have the effective mindset to do that. Now what we got to make sure is that you have the emotional fortitude to act on it. Because in theory, if you were a machine, we just gave you the first two parts, you'd be good to go. If you were a computer, we programmed you. But we're all human beings. We all have our emotions. So we got to make sure that we have the emotional fortitude to not let those emotions distract us from the truth of what we should be doing. And the best way we do that is by flushing out what are the main blockers you have in your subconscious. And once we did that with him, things also took an interesting turn. So we realized that some of his main beliefs were that in order to be successful, I have to beat out others. And he had a lot of stuff. He was a great basketball player in high school. And he had stuff from that environment that he was carrying over to trading. And when he would see there was one other star trader in his firm. And when he would see his email reports of how he did this week, he would take it almost as kind of not intimidation, but man, why is he doing so well? Why am I not doing so well? Instead of seeing it, you know what? If he's doing this well, I can definitely do that well as well. And the same thing with the superiors when they're red teaming his trades, instead of saying, man, why are they always judging this or not just supporting it? Instead of saying, wow, I got someone really smart here to also help me make better decisions that can make me more money. Emil, go ahead.
Can you just clarify what red teaming his trades means?
Oh, sorry. So red teaming is a general concept. So it's a military thing. So basically when you create a plan of attack, a strategy, whatever it may be, if you, Emil, created that, I would then be, I'm part of your team. I'd be, okay, for the sake of the exercise, to make sure there's no issues with your plan and flush out any potential dangers, I'm going to red team it. So I'm going to behave like the enemy and I'm going to say, okay, this is what I would do, this is what I would do, this is what I do, and this is how I think I can take your plan apart. And if we do that together, then we can figure out a better plan together. So it's a very common practice.
Yeah.
Yes. Very well. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So, and it's a very powerful tool that you learn in the military very early on. And I think it's also what desensitizes you to criticism, because you recognize I'm not being criticized. He's helping me red team this plan. He's helping me. He's not criticizing me. He's helping me criticize this plan. And if you're looking at people as always your competition, they're not helping you. You're competing against each other.
Yeah.
And once we were able to get his mindset around the fact that the belief was in order to be successful, I have to beat others out, it's not true. Your easiest pathway to success is by utilizing others, especially those whose job is to help your trades. It made a big difference. And that's what enabled him to go bigger, trade bigger, because he just felt more comfortable and he was less concerned that people are going to judge him. Because he realized their job is not actually to judge me here. It's to help criticize and red team the trade so I can succeed more. That's literally what that job exists. His manager, for example. That's literally his job. But it's all about understanding that in that way. Does this make sense?
Yeah, the red team analogy is great because the other guy on his team also doesn't want to, die on this plan. So it's in his best interests to, make sure that it's the best plan possible. And I think in that analogy, you can see how they're exactly on the same team. And it's not criticizing the plan, it's upgrading the plan. It's leveling up the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so I'll say this, I get what you're doing, but honestly, it is criticizing the plan. But
it is criticizing the plan, but with a goal of leveling it up.
Exactly. And a goal of not just leveling the plan up, but helping him out as well.
And yourself out, essentially. Same with the manager. The manager
win-win.
wants better performance. It's a win-win, yeah.
Yeah, and just so to see it as a win-win, that's the thing. So that was one. Another one was that if I wanted to make a ton of money, then I want to sacrifice the balance I've cultivated in my life, which is a very common belief. A lot of people hold. A lot of entrepreneurs, not just traders, but a lot of entrepreneurs, see them hold this belief, and they self-sabotage their success almost without recognizing it, because they very firmly believe that if they get to the next level of success, the team grows, the business grows, the income grows, whatever it may be, they're going to give up their freedom. Usually that's the big word. I'll give up my freedom if my business grows. So without recognizing it, and they're completely unaware that they have this on a conscious level, they hold things back. They purposely play small. They ruin the big proposal in some way. They don't fully go for it. They don't give themselves the freedom to actually pursue something bigger, because they're worried they'll be having certain freedoms taken away from them. The lifestyle that they've built, the happiness they built, the relationship with their significant other, because they think it's going to up the stress levels, everything. And this is a really, really big belief I see in a lot of entrepreneurs that really aggressively holds them back. Now, the reality is that he realized that his performance is helped, not hindered, by him taking care of his body, of his relationships, and also just like he called it his spirituality. And he realized that I won't actually lose balance if I have more success, but me actually giving more focus to balance will actually allow me to have more success. To think about it in a reverse perspective like that. Does that
I think
make
a lot
sense?
of entrepreneurs have that belief
Yes.
that they have to sacrifice balance and health for success, and they play this out all the time. Relationships, balance, health, all these little things that they think they can't do until XYZ happens.
Yes. So first off, yes. There's two camps I see. There's some people who think they have to wait for those until they get to a certain level of success. And there's also the other camp that already has those. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They already have a great relationship. They already have great health.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why they're afraid to scale their business to the next level.
I see. Yeah.
So they say,
that's
okay,
a subtle difference. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a subtle but important difference, because you can find yourself in either camp. If you already have great relationships, great health, great friendships, great freedoms in life, and you find yourself the business has plateaued, I would check and ask yourself, do I hold this belief? Have I never thought about it before, but is there a belief inside of me, a fear that if the business grows to the next level, it's going to take what I've worked so hard to gain? All this freedom, this amazing lifestyle, this amazing relationship, being able to see my kids, all these kind of things. And the reality is that might not be true. There might be a way for you to have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Or even the more ominous version of that is if you have already sacrificed all those things and your business has plateaued and you feel that you can't include them because to get more business, you need to work harder, you need to push more, you need to do more. And that I see a lot of entrepreneurs in that position. That seems to be the baseline.
Yeah. Then again, you probably have something in your beliefs. There's other ways.
100%.
Other people have done it. And again, it's something to recognize. Cool. So those were the two primary ones I wanted to go after. Does this make sense? How even if you have this clear standard that I want to live with courage, and in order to do so, I must take chances where I sense opportunity because this will mean I'll be proud of myself. And you boil those down into an effective mindset of very clear values and very, very clear rules of what I must do. But if those beliefs keep pulling you in different directions, you won't have the emotional fortitude to actually act out on them. Does that all come together?
Yeah. I just want to can I just repeat it once, just for my own clarity? So essentially, step one, define the goal, both internal and external, and then define the person that you need to become to reach that goal.
Not both. First, let's do it as an order. First internal, then external.
Yeah.
This is really important. First, define what do you want, how do you want to feel, and then what's going to be necessary in order for that to become a reality.
Yeah. And then define the person that you need to become to achieve that goal, or define someone who has achieved that goal and what they have, which you do not. So then the second step is define that effective mindset that person has, which would allow them to reach that goal, and break it down into values and then actions or rules.
Yeah.
And those actions or rules are those three specific things which go with each value. So by the end of step 2, you have 9 different, very specific actions, like trade at my max once per week. And this is the bit that I just want to clarify and repeat, is you have these 9 things. And if you just did those 9 things, you would exhibit an effective mindset. You would become this person who you need to be to reach this goal, both internal and external. But people, you can't necessarily just suddenly imagine. Sorry?
People are people. People are
people. So it's not like just because you've got this awareness that you can suddenly start taking these hard choices every time they come up. you're still going to be pulled towards these easy choices. And this is where emotional fortitude comes in.
I want to say something interesting here that I don't think I've ever clarified this on the podcast. So here's the deal. You have these 9 things you're supposed to do now. I absolutely believe that even without the emotional fortitude, people will be able to actually start actioning these 9 things for a while. They'll get super motivated, and that motivation will overcome the internal resistance they have. And people will actually take action on these 9 rules. But after a certain level of time, that motivation is going to be too much to uphold consistently, to stay at a level 10 motivation to overcome your level 10 internal resistance. And that's why we say we don't want to bank on this and say, okay, we clarified these rules, now get after it and do it. We don't want to bank on motivation. So what we do is say, okay, how can we create a system where you don't have friction against doing these things, or as little as possible? And that's why we then work on the beliefs and the emotional fortitude. Because if you can create an internal system in yourself where you don't have to get yourself amped up because there's not a lot of internal resistance you have to fight through in order to do these 9 things, that's when it can become really, really sustainable. It's not just a sprint, but this is just, okay, this is what I do. This is fine. This is how I just get going.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. The internal resistance is like you trying to do those things with a handbrake on.
Yes.
And if you've ever done a motivational course or a mindset course in the past where you were super pumped and started doing the things and then stopped after a while, that was because it was purely based on amping up drive and motivation. And then it slowly ran out and you still ended up failing, right?
Yeah. Or kind of going back or just having a little micro improvement. I think it's necessary to figure out this future version of yourself, who you want to become, and the pathway to get there. What's also necessary that I think most programs miss out on is also figuring out what could be holding you back from doing that.
Yeah.
Because it's never just the clarity on doing what you should be doing. So, I didn't know I needed to do these things. It's never just that. There's also an internal component that's holding you back. So if you can lock out those 2 pieces, and that was the beliefs that we just went over afterwards, that's when you fly. And that's when you get these kind of results.
Boom.
Clear?
Yeah, I love it.
And also just to clarify, because Emil keeps saying how tangible this is, we literally have the guys, they have a tracker where everything's kind of populates for them, and they have their values, their rules, and their main beliefs or insecurities that hold them back. And they give us a score, how well have I been performing on these values and these rules this past week? Every week they score themselves. And then they can see an average of how this is trending. And next to that, we also have how much are your primary insecurities or fears or doubts holding you back? And then they can also see, oh, this is still affecting me a lot. This actually isn't affecting me anymore. So maybe there's something else there because I'm still not getting the result. And it's a very interesting way we can see, like, if everything's green, but you're not getting the results, something's wrong with the system, what we're actually trying to optimize for. If things are going up, we can keep tracking this. It's a very interesting way because, again, it's very, very tangible. Everything's supposed to be tangible and trackable. It's not just put it out into the ether, have these values, and that's kind of that. Cool?
Yeah.
Is that part clear?
Yeah.
All right. So what we did then, we really started getting very tangible. And we said, okay, what do you really need to start doing for this stuff to go to the next level? And we figured out he had 3 really big opportunities in front of him. And there was some big things in the markets that I don't really understand how they impact them. For example, like midterm elections, how they impact the markets, unemployment reports, and something called a CPI, which I don't even know what that means, what the initials mean. I'm just looking at the worksheet we did. But basically, we figured out, okay, how can we make sure that in the high impact situations, all this stuff comes together in a really potent way, and you can take the actions that will really serve you, get you record highs, and so on. And we created a bunch of mental models. And this is how you can compress time in a way where there's, let's say, 5 seconds where a big report comes out and there's a million traders trying to figure out what to do with it. But if you've took the time ahead of time, spent an hour on this, figuring out what should I do in this situation? What should I do if this situation comes out as X or Y or Z? How will I feel about it? How will I process that emotion in the moment? And what should I do? You can make a decision in 5 seconds that for most people will take an hour. And when it's a time sensitive thing, like getting ahead of the market, that could be extremely valuable. So we created 3 mental models for the unemployment report, the midterm elections, and the CPI thing. And basically the whole model around this was how to put myself in a position to be proud of being more courageous and trading bigger. So that's the goal here with these things. And we created simple models. We said, okay, what would an elite trader do in the moment? Then we said, what fear would stop you from doing this? And this is really crucial. Because sometimes people stop when they create these mental models. Is, what should I do there in the moment? But they don't also anticipate, how am I going to feel it's possibly going to cause me to self-sabotage that, hold myself back? So they have this plan, but then their emotion catches them off guard. So they don't actually act on the plan. And then we figured out the if, then, and because, which I'll get into. So, for example, the Friday unemployment report. What would an elite trader do in that moment? He'll be fully prepared for multiple scenarios, whichever way the report goes. He'll be prepared with what trades to execute in accordance with what figures get released, and he'll act with no hesitation once he has the data. That's what an elite trader would do. And then we asked, what fear could possibly stop you from doing that? He said, well, the market will move before me and the market might overshoot. It could expose me to a bigger loss. I'll be out there with a lot of exposure. He realized those would be the initial insecurities that could stop him from taking the actions that would really serve. And as soon as we did that, he's like, man, this is really powerful. Because I recognize this now, and when I see it, I'm not going to be afraid that I miscalculated something. I just recognize that this is just a fear that's going to be there. It's not an indicator or a stop sign, so to speak. It's just something that's there, that's present. It's an uncomfortable thing going really big. But it doesn't mean that I should be cautious because something's wrong here. So then we kind of boil down to a very clear, tangible thing that if I feel a pinch of fear around the market movement or being exposed to a bigger loss, then I will remind myself that it's not going to change my life either way, and to take aggressive action. This is just one bet I'm doing to keep progressing. And why should I do this? Because then I'll be proud of myself for doing the right thing, regardless of how it goes. And we did 2 more mental models like this, and this is what led to that one of those 800K days. And again, 4 out of the 5 best days of his career within 3 days of doing the program. Because he figured this stuff out, both about how he wants to behave, what he needs to do in order for that to be a reality, got rid of the stuff that was holding him back, and then also had the discipline to do these specific mental models for big opportunities. Any questions about this mental model stuff, Emil?
No, I mean, when you put it like this, it's almost, I mean, it's inevitable to succeed, right?
That's what we're trying to do.
That's the goal.
Yeah. But I will say this. One interesting thing was that we did this together, me and him, with the mental models. We did the first one, and we first figured out the 3 big opportunities, and then we fleshed out a mental model for the first one. And then I was like, okay, let's go do number 2 and 3. He's like, I think I'm good, man. I think I can do them by myself. And he's like, no, actually, you know what? I think I don't need to do them. I think I figured this thing out. Okay. I was like, let's do them. Let's just do them. And it was an interesting process for him to realize that even if we went through them, he needed to do them. You still have to do the legwork. You can't just expect yourself to be able to, okay, I learned this trick, so I can pull it off at will. You do have to have the discipline to do the legwork to create these mental models ahead of time. And he did that. He created number 2 and number 3, and he did the legwork. That's why he's had the success.
And look, this applies to this whole process, because I can imagine people will listen to this podcast, gain some clarity and awareness and be like, okay, I've got this. I figured this out. This is amazing. I feel great. But you actually have to do the legwork and go through the steps and take the time. And it takes time to go through each of these steps to gain the benefits. It can't just be a nebulous, abstract, oh, this feels good because I've done a random little piece of it.
Yeah. Do you have any closing notes or questions or things you feel like we should harp in on?
No, I've been jumping in throughout, so I think it's great.
Cool. I want to say 2 things to wrap up. 1, the reason he was able to see all this success, when you boil it down to what was the first action that allowed him to start going through all this, is that during a Q&A session with a lot of other people on the call, he raised his hand and he asked a question. And it's such an interesting thing. I was giving a talk in Bangkok. There was 120 people in the room. At the end of it, I asked, okay, who has a question? And they all came just for that specific talk. It wasn't a part of another event. And only one person raised his hand. I was like, okay, guys, we have time. Who wants to, I'm literally here to coach you guys. I'm here to give as much as possible. And people didn't raise their hands. And they denied themselves the opportunity to be helped. That's the first thing. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. And it's really that simple. When you have the opportunity to be helped, get help. That was the first thing. I think that was really the main reason why he was able to do all this, because he had the courage, whatever you want to call it, during that call to say, hey, this doesn't feel fully comfortable, but I think I have this thing. I want to ask a question about it in front of other people. And that's why he won. So that's the first thing. The second, to kind of encapsulate all this, he already had all this skill set to trade. You guys could see, I don't know basically anything about trading. I have a couple index funds, and that's as much as my knowledge there goes. But when you boil it down again, mindset is an access issue. And to kind of ask the question I asked him for you guys is, where is optimizing for external approval causing you to contract? To perhaps live in fear and play small and only access a little bit of your potential because you're afraid of possibly being judged, possibly losing. And how much more free would you be if you access all of your abilities, if you really optimize for feeling proud of yourself instead of seeking approval from others? It's such a big thing. And I've told this to the guys in this specific arena cohort, a couple of them really latched onto it. When the person you crave approval from is your future self, it frees you up to do the right things. When you think about it in action, should I do A or should I do B? And you simply say, you know what would my future self be proud that I did? It's amazing the clarity you have. And even as Emil said, when there's an easy choice and a hard choice, you just forget about easy, hard. You just take the choice that will serve you, regardless if it's easy or hard.
I love it.
That's it for me.
Yeah, and even tying the two together, trying to avoid judgments of others, like not asking a question in a room of people is fear of judgment of how you might come across and how people might think. That's making the easy choice is not asking that question. So it's just how they tied together was just very entertaining for me. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I think we'll wrap it at that. Aside from that, thank you, Emil, for being on, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Emotional Fortitude podcast. Please tell a friend if you enjoyed it and found value in it. 3 last things before you go, though. If you feel like someone else with your exact skill set and abilities could be accomplishing more than you currently are, that's a mindset and emotional access issue. And here are 3 ways I'd love to help you conquer any internal limitations, go big, and win. 1, 3 Quick Ideas Tuesday newsletter. It's a weekly email with 3 quick ideas around one aspect of elite performance and how to approach it differently to get better and faster results. People say it's the most thought-provoking and impactful 2 minutes they spend in their inbox each week. It's easy to sign up to and easy to cancel, and you can sign up at itamarrani.com/3ideas. 2 is the Emotional Fortitude micro course. It will help you build the emotional fortitude and confidently tackle any goal. It's the complete, nothing held back emotional fortitude system in 5 simple parts. It's all under 5 minutes each module. See it, use it, and win. And it's completely free at itamarrani.com/course. And number 3, lastly, if you want to dive in and aggressively level up, the Arena Mindset Accelerator might be for you. It's a 6-week intense sprint for entrepreneurs who are up for a dramatic transformation. It's an interactive live program where you'll be working with me in a very hands-on way to get clarity on what you want, build an effective mindset to optimize for your goals, and establish elite emotional fortitude that would allow you to overcome any fear or doubt that could get in your way. You can learn more at itamarrani.com/accelerator. You can find all of these links in the show notes below or go to itamarrani.com and have a look around. Until next time, who dares wins.